This is not Total War. This is a game called Strategos, and well, this is the best competition we have so far. But I'm not really talking about the competition just yet, but it is a prime example of people that are coming for the crown of the best RTS game, because Total War has a lot to sort out, and there is a lot to talk about, with new updates, the future, and of course, the changes that have to be made after a few disastrous years for Creative Assembly. I think it's time we talk about the future of Total War.
This is Enshrouded. I have played it for quite some time now, but the developers came and said, do you want to do a video for us? We'll sponsor it on your channel. So I said, hey, Update 6 is coming out, so we better have a look. There's a new weapon upgrading system with new loot dropping from elite and dangerous enemies. Speaking of enemies, my god, there are so many more, like the flying jellyfish, absolutely terrifying, the Critiquees, predators, elites. There is so much within Enshrouded. But if you've not played it before, it's a huge open world RPG that can support up to 16 players in co-op tandem. And my god, is there so much to explore. The amount of new locations. There's currently being planned 42 new points of interest, both mini locations and expansive ones as well. Things like new camps and new scavenger factions as well, and the new night gameplay, which I cannot wait to try. So if you want to go and check out Enshrouded with Update 6 with the link in my description, go and click it there.
In 2023, Creative Assembly sort of went into crisis mode. It had half a decade of not just failures, but pure disasters on a PR point of view. From the Epic Game Store taking up a lot of their games, and really deals that seemed to not pull off in the end, most of the fan base were really starting to turn upon the RTS overlords. The Total War franchise, though, really hit its rock bottom in the last couple years. Creative Assembly being seen out of touch, putting money first, and completely ignoring all feedback from its player base. Sure, they still had a huge amount of legacy faith from their players. Things like the early Rome Total War, Medieval 2, even things like Shogun Total War and later like Attila, people love the franchise. So it kept people coming back to the old games, but there was no reason for them to try what Creative Assembly had new on the table. This meant that monetization just wasn't really the same. The income was not the same for Creative Assembly, so they had to find other ways to do it. And the ways that they went were not exactly ideal. Really predatory DLC practices, factions that didn't seem that they were worth being paid for, and of course splitting off content and then charging for it later. That's not to mention half games, Sega games that were priced as full titles, and well, nobody reacted very well to that. The staff were turning on their own company. We had the guy that came out of Rome 2 Total War that spoke up just last year, talking about how the company was already facing issues back in 2012 and 2013 before the launch of Rome 2. You see, it was showing on the wall at that point, but seeing staff talk about it over a decade later really says something. The good ideas were being ignored by management, people were leaving, and of course there was a priority on Sega, the publishing company, getting what they wanted rather than the creativity of Creative Assembly themselves. This is not just the only issues that CA have had though. Hyenas was an absolute huge $100 million shooter, hoping to be the next big mainstream FPS, and not only did it not just flop, it was cancelled completely. Not a single penny was gained from that game, and everything, the hundreds of hours, the thousands of man hours behind that title, the hundreds of millions of dollars, and of course all the work from the team gone in an instant. It had hellish development, burning cash, and really showed people what CA was doing here. They had lost their focus on the Total War franchise and understandably wanted to branch out to something new, try and get something that showed them in a different light, but they brought their same bad practices with them. This cancellation really exposed the scale of Sega's frustration with CA's output, because of course it wouldn't have been Creative Assembly that cancelled Hyenas, it would have been their publishers themselves. Infighting from a publisher to a developer is always a bad sign, and especially on a scale as big as this one. But the Total War franchise was still in jeopardy. Even the newer games like Warhammer 3 had its issues. The Shadows of the Change DLC was a disaster, people complaining about its shallow content and poor value for money, and boy were they charging a pretty penny for it. Hate flooded in, reviews started to drop, and player counts hit rock bottom for Creative Assembly. We then had Total War Pharaoh, a game that came out to absolutely nothing. Hardly anybody played it, hardly anybody reviewed it, and the ones that did gave it the most mediocre or disappointing scores possible. This was being charged as a full price game, but really it was a spin-off. Much like the other Sagas games, Pharaohs series was just trying to focus on one pinpointed part of history, not a full branch of factions in the whole world. Yet Creative Assembly still put that $60 price tag on it, which did not make fans very, very happy. A half-baked game for a full price. It launched as a, well, disaster in most people's eyes, and whilst it had a smaller scope and trying to focus on certain mechanics, and some of the stuff that came back into it from old Total War games were fine, but it just didn't actually bring any players back and almost stunk the Creative Assembly name just that little bit more. So it's not gone too well. I think it's safe to say that. But is it all bad for CA? Is there any way they can change this round whatsoever? Well, there have been some positives. The Total War games are doing pretty well in terms of Warhammer. I mean, Total War Warhammer 3 is still one of the biggest games on their roster and still getting players up the wazoo. We got Total War Rome Remastered, which was fine. I mean, it wasn't the best reviewed game, but people still love it just because of the core and its shell that it is based on, the original Rome Total War. We've also had some better changes. I mean, Shadows of Change was patched and somewhat fixed. People started to become more happy with that, bringing the player base of Warhammer 3 up, losing a lot of those negative reviews. Not just that, but Total War Pharaoh managed to fix itself as well. In July of 2024, Creative Assembly released an expanded map, new factions, and so much more value to the game. This was one of the biggest free updates that they've ever done, and not making anyone pay a penny for it showed that Creative Assembly could be on the right track to actually fix things. Reviews jumped from 64% to 84% positive, and people were raving at not just why this game is so much better, but why it could show that Creative Assembly are on a new direction. You see, that's the main thing you need from a fan base, is trust, and Creative Assembly did build it up over a decade and a half of positive games up until Total War Attila. But really, after that point, it was just downhill. Every game that came out, whether it was Thrones of Britannia, whether it was Three Kingdoms, whether it was Total War Pharaohs or even Troy, had something wrong with it. But it wasn't necessarily wrong with the game, but wrong with the direction of the company. And it showed through the gameplay and the factors of value within these titles. Yet they could be changing it around now. And that is what I hope. We had a new announcement from Creative Assembly themselves, being a lot more transparent as a company and telling us exactly what their plans are for the future. From June of 2025, we are getting a Total War launcher complete removal. You know when you click on a Total War game and it opens up its entirely own launcher that is just fiddly and clunky? Well, yeah, they know that, and they are going to replace it with proper mod management systems, aiming for a much more seamless experience. There's also going to be no longer blood packs being sold separately. This was controversial since Rome 2 Total War back in 2013. Actually putting blood packs as a paid extra was incredibly annoying. Of course, they did it to keep the certificate at a 16 rather than an 18 game, but charging extra money for people to put blood in their games and dismemberment was kind of a little bit scummy. But for now, blood effects will be included in the base game if appropriate. The only thing that I'm worried about is that is probably still going to be less than what we'd get with the blood packs, because they are still kind of worried about those ratings going up. On the other hand of that, they have said they will accept higher age ratings if needed, and if I'm going to be honest, I think they should. They've got the fan base, they just need to keep people in it. I mean, children do play the Total War games, but the difference between a 16 and 18 rated game is not the thing that is going to change whether somebody buys it or not on the most part, especially since I'm pretty sure every single person that plays Total War game just purchases the blood packs anyway, no matter their age. There will also be a little bit more in terms of adult content within the titles, a bit more violent and bloody gameplay, which I think is sorely missed within realistically an adult focused franchise. There will be no more faction pre-order bonuses, no more buy early or miss out content model. Pre-orders will offer discounts only, not gameplay critical factions, and acknowledgement of this practice, and they have also acknowledged how divisive and predatory it is. There will be free content updates to the Shadows of Change, of course. Each faction, there'll be more free content updates coming in the future, and most importantly, their long-term moves and business strategy. CA admits that their past release pace was unsustainable. From 2015 to 2020, annual releases were coming pretty undercooked. Nobody really wanted them in the form they were, and whilst it was great to get new games, unfortunately it was more disappointing than anything. People waiting for, I don't know, a Three Kingdoms era title and then getting something that was not quite as packed out as they'd really wanted it to be. Everybody wanted more ancient stuff, but Troy was just, well, half a game. So that's all going to change. The next Total War project won't be revealed until late 2025 and probably will be released in mid to late 2026. That means a 4-year gap from Warhammer 3, which is actually the longest gap since Rome 2 Total War. Hopefully this shows they are doing something pretty impressive. I say that, they have released Troy and Pharaohs within that time, and whilst they can be called spin-off saga games, in Total War's eyes they are still pretty much full games considering the price they initially sold them for. This, though, is going to be important. It is showing a huge shift, which I'm incredibly excited about, that Total War has listened to the fans after a while, and realistically, we all know, listened to their bank account. But that does mean good things for the fans themselves. There's going to be potential remasters for the old games. Of course, we've already had a remaster for Rome Total War. If we can get a remaster for Medieval 2, that would be fantastic. I think their safest option is just to make a Medieval 3 at this point if they want to bring revenue back up the wazoo. That will almost flip the company on its head and get it back on track. And of course, there are plenty of other bits to work on. Now, all of these remasters, if they do come, are probably going to be made by Fowler Interactive. They've already done stuff like porting some of the Total War games to iOS, and I think they also did the Rome Total War remastered. But everything that's going to come in the remaster sort of era is going to be on the same engine as Rome Total War. So that's pretty much it. There's a lot to go about. I mean, Sega itself, as the big upper company, has done a lot of restructuring. It's been all over the place, but finally, I think we might get something new. I think we're going to get a new Total War game within the next couple of years that will hopefully be as fully baked as the previous 2 decades, but we can only really see once it's out. So I am still cautious, but optimistically so. Yet I'd love to know what you think. Please leave a comment down below. Do you think that this is Creative Assembly saying they're turning things around, or do they still have a long road ahead before they get your faith back? But subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.